Hi, I'm Josh. Today I want to talk to you about life in the universe. How did life come about? Are we alone in the universe? And how the hell can we possibly know one way or the other? These are all questions that are addressed in Taxi from Another Planet, a set of essays by Charles S. Cockell. Cockell is a professor, a scientist, astrobiologist, and a science communicator. He is the author of a number of trade books as well as textbooks. Essential among those might be his book on astrobiology, a book that I've actually read a good deal of and even taught over the course of 6 years as a PhD student. In 1 year, I even got to teach the course as the main lecturer. So I am actually very intimately related to this material, and that was really what drew me to requesting this book on NetGalley. And I even actually got an advanced reader copy, hard copy, from the publisher, Harvard Press, I believe it was. I'm extremely grateful for a number of reasons, not just because the book was amazing, but because it's my second official physical art that I've received from a publisher. And while I am a little delayed here in my review, I want to communicate just how amazing I think this book is at talking about this subject, and I think at getting you excited about it. There is so much wonder and just awe to be had at the nature of life and at the question of how the hell it all happened and if we're alone in the universe. These are not trivial questions. The way in which he talks about this, that Cockell talks about these topics, is immersive, thought-provoking, and extremely engaging. So please journey with me on this bookish voyage as I talk to you about Taxi from Another Planet. So as I said, I am myself a planetary scientist, an astrobiologist even. While I'm not a biologist in the same sense that Cockell is, my area of expertise tends to relate more to the geology and geophysics and how that intersects to habitability. I won't get into my work specifically, although I would love to if anybody's interested and talk about it in the comments. But that's the perspective that I'm coming at from this material. That said, I already mentioned how I have TA'd and taught this course over 6 years, so the material is not new to me. And I want to start there because I recognize there's a level of bias, I guess is the best word I can think of, in my impression of this book, because I found this book surprisingly immersive and engaging and just very thought-provoking, even as these are ideas I've already thought about a lot. But of course, it's also my career, and from that sense, of course I'm excited about it. And of course, I think what he says is thought-provoking. But if you can look past my own sort of rose-colored glasses that I have towards this subject, I do think that he presents these topics in a really engaging way, in a way that is assured to really make you think about all these topics. I'll get into exactly what he talks about and the structure of the work, because even though it is essays, it really feels like it's a coherent nonfiction work where it's structured in a way that sort of introduces you to the topic of astrobiology and then walks you through the major ideas in a way that flows naturally and makes sense. Some of the questions that he talks about is, of course, the origin of life on Earth and how life came about, whether or not life was likely or inevitable, whether or not we should expect life to exist on the planets. Why haven't we heard from life? What does that say for our place in the cosmos? And should we be striving to invest in space exploration, not just from a scientific perspective, but from a human exploration, like a curiosity and, of course, preservation perspective? He has these conversations in a frank way that acknowledges really why there's a drive for these things, while also acknowledging the limitations and forcing us as a reader to think of these ideas in a way that is still thought-provoking, explains why it's exciting, but also making sure that we approach this with a healthy level of skepticism and reservation. There has been, or continues to be, or has always been, a great deal of, what's what I'm looking for? I don't want to say pseudoscience, but there's a great deal of misrepresentation for the sake of pulling in the reader by news outlets and even some scientists. Recently, there was the Oumuamua interstellar object that flew through the solar system, and there was a Harvard astronomer who went through this, made a book and everything, which I have not talked about despite my desire to, because of the fact that he went through and he basically made this huge case, well, this might be aliens. And in doing so, he not only disparaged an entire field of astrobiologists, extraterrestrial scientists who have spent their lives looking for this type of thing. Basically disparage them as if they're not investing their time or their money into this, while simultaneously overinflating the possibility that this could be aliens, simply because it felt new to him, and of course it brought him a lot of clout. It's a perfect example of how it is really easy to oversell and to mislead people in this subject. And that is one of the most dangerous things about astrobiology, is that when we overinflate our expectations, it not only will push spurious ideas and dangerous ideas, I think it will undersell the importance of real findings. Like when we eventually find life, how important will it be when we find microbes on Mars or on the icy moons? How significant will that be? What will it mean if it has DNA or fundamentally different basic structure? It will have a great deal of stir, but how quickly until people lose their interest? How quickly until it just feels boring and normal and insignificant? And part of this is because of how things are oversold. It's important to understand the context and the evidence behind something and how we know things, while still, I think, having a healthy level of optimism and curiosity in the subject. Because I approached this as someone who's thought a lot about these ideas already, many of the things he talked about were not new to me. The way he framed it was an interesting new perspective that I appreciate, and I think I have a lot to learn from as someone who is just a major, player in the field of astrobiology, but also in astrobiology communication and outreach. But one idea that I think really sparked my interest was when thinking about the Fermi-Terre paradox, the idea of if there are aliens, why haven't we found them? I mean, the universe is a big place. That's a really big reason why. And while he didn't frame it exactly like this, it prompted me to think about it. How quickly did Earth become clearly life-bearing? We look for signatures, so he talks about this in the book, we look for signatures of exoplanets like oxygen. Oxygen is not proof that is life, but oxygen being sustained in an atmosphere for a long period of time at high levels is strong evidence of life. The point is one might could assume, the best case scenario, maybe an advanced civilization can get fairly definitive evidence that there was life. That would have happened, I guess the oxygen craze being as a single indicator would have happened plenty of time for life to at least try to approach us, to approach Earth rather. If not in search for us, then at least in search of life. I'm really getting off into a big tangent here, because there's a lot of technicalities to talk about here, political logistics to think about as far as why would they care about one planet out of millions. I guess this is a question of asking, is it feasible to think that maybe they could get here, or rather they could have identified us sooner with enough time to get here within a giant radius around us? And I think you could justify that. But then there's the question of, do you really expect generations, we're talking thousands to millions of years of generations of alien species to survive quarantined in basically a giant ark? That was an idea I never really thought about, was the practicality, the reality of having to travel great distances, even at high speed. Assuming you can't break the laws of physics and go faster than light speed, that type of trek, that type of long distance travel will inevitably alter the civilization that is traveling, if not utterly destroy it. That alone, I think, is a very compelling reason of why haven't we seen life visit us? I mean, space is big. Even I always said that phrase of maybe they can't. The question is, maybe it's just not, maybe they can, but not in a practical sense. I don't know why I felt the need to fixate on that one idea that was explored in the book. I guess I just wanted to highlight how the book got me to rethink things I have already thought about, which I really thought was exciting. And that's all I wanted to say. He frames these ideas in a very good way. Let me rephrase this. I wasn't sure what to expect coming in, because Taxi from the Planet, because I should have said this sooner, as a series of essays, the idea is these are conversations he can have with taxi drivers. These are conversations that people might prompt out of him, or he might just by chance start. And he uses as a context to explore these ideas with us through the perspective of these interactions he has with them. The conversations he has is always building on to those conversations. It's this sort of a grounding to start the conversation in the book, and then he sort of explores it in a deeper sense. And I wasn't sure going in whether or not he would just be giving us the sort of low-level conversation you'd expect in a taxi, or really detailed. And when I say he went the detailed route, I don't want that to be worrying to you as a reader if it's too detailed. I mean detailed in a fascinating and intellectual sense, in the sense that if you really want to think about these ideas about life, the nature of life, and human exploration in space, and our place in the universe, there's a level of depth that's necessary. And I don't think it's a depth that is necessarily off-putting. It is thought-provoking in all the best ways. And that is why the book, to me, worked so well as a work of nonfiction. He explores these ideas that are just, I think, guaranteed to excite and to stimulate the senses, because of just how exciting these ideas are to most people. It's hard not to think about life, whether it be life on Earth or life outside of Earth, and not get excited about that. And if you ever want to think about that in a serious way, this book is a great way to do it. Now, I really don't have any complaints here, other than the fact that it's not on audio and I had just text-to-speech it. But even then, the fact that I managed to stay so focused and attentive, I think speaks highly of the book to keep me interested, even as I use a text-to-speech reader, even given some AI advances that are making this a bit better. But this is a different conversation. Another thing that I sort of was curious to ask him as a scientist was, does he really have these conversations that often? Personally, I love my job. I love talking about these things. But, when you're in the taxi, when you're going home, sometimes you just want to separate the job from the personal life. And one thing I wonder is how exhausting it can be to have these conversations, because sometimes, while it can be exciting, sometimes it feels like these conversations are necessarily starting from the most fundamental level in a way that just almost feels like you're lecturing to a first-year class. Maybe that's too pretentious of me. Maybe I'm assuming too little of the average person in this kind of conversation. And it's just interesting. I enjoy these conversations. At the same time, I've had plenty of experiences where I just really don't want to talk about it. And I'm curious, as a book that talks about conversations with taxis, whether or not he ever feels that. These are just questions that popped up in my head as sort of I don't know if I call myself a colleague, but someone as another professional in the field. I guess I can call myself that. I do have a PhD, after all. It's inadequate as I might still feel. Big picture, if you made it to the end, thank you so much, I appreciate you. But big picture, I genuinely recommend this book. I haven't heard many people talk about it, which is fair. It's a horror press, and it hasn't been like a major release. But when I think about the thing that I love the most, studying about space and the potential for life on Earth, outside of Earth, and in the solar system, and outside the solar system, this book stimulates all of those ideas. It explores it in a way that is just so thought-provoking. And I really, I can't strongly enough encourage you to give it a try. These are the things that I love most in the world, and I think you might like it too. It's really exciting stuff, and the book does its job very effectively. I can already tell you this will almost certainly be my top 10, if not my top 5 or 3 books of the year, if not even all the way up there. We'll have to wait and see how it sort of settles with time. This book was just a very satisfying read. It was one of those books that I didn't want to put down, I didn't want to stop, and it was just such a pleasure, such a joy. And so I appreciate if you watch this review, please consider giving it a read. And as always, have a great day, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.